They have talked for almost 2 years. They, the PGA Tour and the LIV, they are no closer to a deal. And Rory McIlroy popped off this week in Europe, indicating this merger is not going to go through. He says, if we put this up to a vote, more than 60% of the players would vote against it. And was asked by some of the global media, why is that? He says there's a couple things at play here. One, the players on the PGA Tour right now are the few superstars, the Schefflers, Scotty Scheffler, Rory, superstars, and young guys who have elevated themselves and are winning tournaments. He said the players are, quote, protecting their own interest. Their own interest is, why would I want to bring other superstars back in to the field and change everything that pushes a whole bunch of guys down in their earning ability? He said the second item is, to a man, there's nobody that wants to welcome those guys back who violated the PGA Tour card and took the payments, the blood money, to go to Saudi Arabia and to play in LIV. We won't let them back in unless they pay a penalty or they pay their way back in. And that's, the negotiations are stuck over that these guys want payback for being loyal, and they want those guys to pay a penalty for having jumped to take that money. So people have not forgiven Phil Mickelson or Dustin Johnson, Brooks Koepka, DeChambeau, no matter how great the players are, have not forgiven them what they did to the PGA Tour. So 2 years into all these negotiations, they are no closer today than they were the first time you and I brought this topic up on the table. Said, hey, a global tour where we finally have peace, that would be good for the sport, because to me, the sport is suffering. The TV ratings are monstrously bad right now, outside of the marquee events. We all watch the British Open and the Masters, etc., but nobody's watching anything else. And the LIV, I watch the LIV. It's on KUSI, where I do the weekend sports packages on Saturday. I mean, I'm shocked at home, and I dial across it, and I'm watching the 18th hole on Sunday, and there's like 38 people on the 18th hole watching the final round of the final hole. There's nobody in the stands. Nobody's paying attention, not on anybody's radar, and they think it's working well. And the LIV has just burned through an enormous amount of money, and I don't think they're getting any positive feedback from it. So, John, your thoughts on what Rory McIlroy had to say?
This is so weak. I mean, Rory McIlroy, I give him credit trying to get everyone together and being a leader. But if you're a player in the PGA and you're saying, I don't want those other Bryce and DeChambeau to come in because they're really good and I might not make the cut, that's weak. I mean, this is pro golf at the highest level. You can't be keeping competitors out. Now, the whole thing about, they left for the blood money, and they don't want to allow them to come back. But we've seen this in the NFL with the USFL. Remember when they split up? And then some of those players came back, like Jim Kelly and who was the other one? Herschel Walker, yeah. But when they did that, did the NFL zing them when they came back?
No, because the USFL went out of business. They folded because Donald Trump and those guys spent so much money, and they couldn't get the money back. And then suddenly the league went out of business, and the league sued and got $1. They won the court case and they were awarded $1. They had sued over antitrust violation. But when those players became free agents and they all went into a draft, and that's how Herschel Walker wound up in Minnesota, and Jim Kelly wound up going from the Houston Gamblers to Buffalo, etc. But that's because the league folded. LIV has not ceased operation. I think everything would change if the public investment firm of Saudi Arabia said, we're not going to fund this anymore. Then that league would go away. But we're two years into it. They've paid volumes of money to these players. Players are playing abroad, some in Europe, playing more tournaments here. Nobody's going to the tournaments here. They have a second-rate TV package, and nobody's attracted to it despite all the marquee names.
You know what's going to happen if they're not careful is that the PGA is going to become irrelevant. And all the focus will be on LIV, and PGA will be like, minor league. It'll be like the NIT tournament in basketball, so I'd be afraid of that. I mean, I think this is a real threat because that the Saudis would love to take it all over and make it a global sport, and they're in charge.
Are you going to ask DeChambeau and Brooks Koepka and Dustin Johnson and Phil, and there's like 35 who left, you're going to ask them to pay a penalty to come back or pay their way back in?
To me, that's a trivial detail. You want to make them make a penalty? Yeah, fine. It doesn't need to be crazy. Maybe it's like, I don't know, for them, and we're talking big money for them, but like maybe it's $15,000, $20,000, just something. Yeah, let them in. I mean, make the sport competitive, because why are you penalizing these guys let's
Because they violated their tour card.
So what? Just bring them back and do the right thing. And if you've got to assess a penalty just to feel like, you're keeping them down and kind of wagging your finger at them, then fine. But don't make the penalty like $1 million or something. Just let them in. Let's just bring them together. Let's just get going.
You could argue with me, but I think you'd be wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are hot topics on the table.